So it is 11 o'clock. And on that note, welcome to the special meeting for the Finance Committee. Will you do a roll call vote or a roll call, Karen?
Councilmember Shirley?
Here.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Here.
Mayor Kerr?
Here. And we're all in attendance. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Randy, could you put a flag up if you're ready?
He's getting it.
Okay, and we can start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So what I'd like to do is any public comments at this point. Stacy, do you have anything in particular you would like to share with us this morning?
I do, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate meeting, but I wanted to share that I'm the executive director of Gathering for Women Monterey.
Oh, great.
Sorry, I just muted myself. We had requested a contribution towards the Casa de Noche Buena shelter. And of course, we recognize that this is a difficult time for everyone, particularly the city, but we would still like to be considered for that. The requested amount that we had asked for was $1,669.
I'm sorry, that was 1,560? Okay.
$1,669.
Okay.
The shelter is open, and we currently have 20 guests, 5 families and 5 single women, and it has been extraordinarily successful so far. We have six of our guests have moved on to permanent housing since the beginning of January. So we request your support, and we're thank you for letting me speak and be part of your meeting today.
Of course. Thank you for being here with us. That is a question that I have. So on that note, I'm going to come back to the committee, and I'd like to turn it over to our acting city manager, Mr. Hoyne.
Morning, Mayor, committee members, Chief, and also Stacy. Just so you know, Stacy, that is one of the topics we have for discussion today. I have your letter, and it is something that we'll be bringing up. Mayor, I would like to present to you our draft budget. This morning we sent out a draft staff report for the June 22nd meeting that explains the budget. I hope that the committee members who are here were able to retrieve that and review it.
I was not.
Okay, it is a draft report for June 22nd.
Okay.
So that's why it's not in this. We're still working on things, and it's, budget preparations takes a little bit, and Roberto is helping us immensely remotely from Florida, where it's probably much sunnier, and he's probably on a beach. That's why he doesn't have his camera on. Anyway, the budget this year's, the proposed draft budget this year is only a single year budget, and we did that based upon the continuing COVID pandemic and the uncertainty in forecasting revenues at this point. It would not make sense. It's kind of why we're doing a new budget in the middle of a 2-year budget. It would not make sense for us to draft a 2-year budget and then have to revise in another year if any of our assumptions, which are difficult to make, would change, and that would be a high probability. So we're coming forward with a 1-year budget in hopes of resetting this year, getting back on track, and hopefully returning to a 2-year budget cycle next year. The budget is a balanced budget. We have some increases in different areas. One, some of our service level line items, such as repair and maintenance and supplies for public works, are increased in a move to get back towards more normal levels of operation. There are several different grants that are in the budget, either proposed or awarded already in this draft budget, including, and luckily, our draft was $310,000 for the ARPA funding. We have since found out that our allotted amount will be $395,000. So that is an increase of $85,000 that will go
97.
397. I'm just being general. And 397 and $632.25, Mayor. But that's a nice increase of approximately $87,000 that will be, of course, worked into this. This is a draft, and we got those numbers as we completed this draft. There are a few things that are still outstanding that we are working on. One of those, as Stacy has already mentioned, is the CASA Shelter for Women, Families, and Children donation. Another one is our JPA. We're a member with Community Human Services. I have to make sure that that is in the budget. I have not been able to get with Roberto and drill down on that. And then just now we received a request from the police department for Lefta Systems, which is a data tracking system for our reporting requirements under RIPA, the Racial Identity Profiling Act, which we have to start participating in next year. And that will allow us to track that data much easier and not spend probably dozens, if not hundreds of hours of staff time trying to cull that data out of our reporting system. All told, it's approximately $10,000, at least right now, that we will be looking to add to the budget. Taking into account, of course, there's going to be an increase in about $87,000 of available funds. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Roberto so that he can explain in a little more depth about our budget strategy this year, the staff report, and also the line item budget. Roberto?
Mayor Kerr, members of the committee, today we're going to be discussing a working document, basically. And so we're looking to improve this document with your input and help get it ready for the full council consideration. I apologize, my video's off because can't get it to come on. That's just technology sometimes. And so early on, we sent you the line items to take a look at, which probably were all Greek without a full explanation of some of those items. Yeah. So we have a draft staff report, which was sent out. Not everybody got a chance to review it. I'd like to review it. I don't like to read things, but this is a very simple, short read, and there are some things I want to make sure are clearly understood from the document. So what we're going to do is start at a higher level. We're going to look at the budget from a fund level, then we'll look into it at a department level, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of every line item to the extent that you would like to. So let me share my screen here. Let's see, share. So this is the staff report that went out. It's just a draft. As Jeff mentioned, this budget is balanced. It's for fiscal year 21-20. It is balanced, so with current year revenues, and it begins to restore some of the cuts that were made. And there are changes to the budget just because the city used to be a sleepy little town with a very simple budget. The budget has changed, as you will see. We have a lot more funds, a lot more money, a lot of things going on. So for this year, it's just 1 year. We're hoping to use this as a rebuilding year to reset priorities and be prepared for another unexpected event. You know, fortunately, the last couple of years, we were planning for a downturn in the economy. Not what we were expecting this, but it's still, all that planning helped out because it helped the city to make it through this pandemic. The budget does reflect an increase in revenues and in expenditures. So the major changes that you'll see, it makes use of full fund accounting. So we will talk a little bit more about the use of the funds, how they work, and there's going to be more at the department level. So council can see where the money really is being spent, not just line item by line item, but in the whole, how is the money being spent? And also talking about the grants, is the city starting to make more use of grants, and we're going to be reporting those individually. And we hope that with your input, we'll develop this into each and every year into a much better working document that'll help the city make strategic decisions. So as we go through here, definitely looking for feedback from you as to what you want to see. Because from an accountant's perspective, I know what's supposed to be there, but you as an elected official may want to see other data that we're not thinking about as staff. So at the fund level, this is the budget for 21-22. As you can tell, there's a lot more, we have a lot more funds. And actually, let me see, to make this a little bit easier, I'm gonna switch over to my Excel worksheet and move the Word document out of the way. The Word document explains some of the things that I'm gonna be discussing, but I think with the numbers in front of you, it makes a little more sense. So the general fund, as you can tell, is balanced. We have revenues of 4.1, appropriations of 3.9. There's a transfer out. So it has a surplus of 187,000 for the year, the way it's budgeted right now. And so that's the good news. It is balanced. A lot of agencies have had trouble trying to get a balanced budget. Fortunately, we're in good shape. Plus, we do have a fund balance of about 1.9 million that we did not have to touch during the pandemic. A lot of agencies had to dig into that. That's still whole. So the general fund is good. We'll look at all the details in a minute. The things that are somewhat new is all of the use of these funds, which the city kind of didn't really have to work with them that much. But just so for your info, the gas tax fund, that money is coming from gas tax revenues. They've been around for a long time. That's before the increase in taxes. These revenues can only be spent for street-related purposes. So we're expecting 41.5. We're spending 25,000 for street lighting and street sweeping. That's clearly street-related. So we have a surplus of 16.4. That'll be added to the existing fund balance. So that's going to go up to 51,000. So these are special revenue funds, can only be used for specific purposes. We can't use that for other things, but as far as street-related purposes, there's going to be extra money. And little by little, we may maybe move other things into this fund as long as they're street-related. And we do have to stay on top of that because a couple of years back, the city had a gas tax audit and they came in and they hadn't looked at the city for 12 years. So it took a long time to go through that. Fortunately, the city came out clean. So that's the gas tax money. Streets.
Roberto, can
Yes.
I interrupt you as we go, or would you like?
Sure, no,
Okay.
by all means.
So that could be used for sidewalks?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And can you tell me which fund is used to repay our loan for the resurfacing of the streets? Is that the Measure X?
Yep. So Measure X was used in 1819 to borrow against, because the city's allocation is only 76,000, which doesn't do much. The city decided to do a major project, the biggest project the city had done. In that case, it borrowed $861,300 out of this Measure X, basically the next 10 years worth of revenue from Measure X, which is administered by TAMSI. It basically repaid a whole bunch of the streets. So now all the money coming in, this 76,000 is going right back to TAMSI to pay for the loan. We don't see it. TAMSI never gives it to us, but we have to account for it. So it's 76,000 coming in and going out, just making debt service. It'll be 10 years approximately before you'll have money here to work on more road projects. But
so can you explain the end funding balance?
That is an oversight on my part. That should be zero.
Okay.
Okay, I need to clean that number up.
Thank you.
And actually, while you mention it here, let me highlight that one. Now, you do have other money.
I just want to make sure, especially for our new council folks, how these funds have been historically used. So I just want to help provide some context for them as we're learning the budget.
Yeah, no, good point. So by all means, ask all the questions you want. If the answer's coming a little bit later, I'll tell you it's coming later. Otherwise, I'll give it to you right here. So these, gas tax, street related, street purposes only, SB1 monies. We probably need to come up with a better name for it. That's the Senate bill that created the Road Rehabilitation and Maintenance Act, which again is money strictly for street purposes. This was the increase in the gas tax that happened a few years back. This is generating about 34,000 a year. So in the past, we haven't done anything with it. We just let it sit there because you can't really do a whole bunch with 33,000, and it cannot supplant what the city's already paying for street purposes. The city has to continue what it was, just to do extra work. So this year there's a project, well, two little projects for 55,000 that we'll get into a little bit more for some street work projects. That's going to use up 21,000. So that's going to be a deficit of 21,000 for the year, but we do have money on hand. And then Measure X. So these two are for street projects. Measure X was for street projects. Now it's just paying debt. And we'll get into the projects here for the SB1 or other projects council may want. The other special revenue fund is the Fora Habitat Fund. That's money we got from Fora. We've agreed to use it specifically for habitat management. It's paying for some of the expenses that Denise Duffy is working on. So there's over 700,000, and that all needs to be planned out and scheduled going forward. Let me, excuse me for a second here. Let me. Okay, so this year, in this fiscal year that we're in, we also had a CARES Act fund, which is not here for next year. This was 50,000 that we got from the state, basically presumed to be used for police services. So that's what we used it for. So you won't see that this year, but it was a fund in this fiscal year that we're in. 50,000 came in and went out specifically for police. What we do have that you just mentioned earlier was the ARPA money. That's the American Rescue Plan Act. This was the number we had before. I understand the number is going to be different now. You said, what was the number that was mentioned?
397,000, Roberto.
397. Okay, well, I'll get the exact amount in a little bit. So at this point, we're just putting this in so that council knows that there is money coming in. The rules for what to spend it and how to spend it on are evolving slowly as the Treasury Department tries to understand how local government works. Some of it presumably will be able to use to make up for things that, where there was shortages in revenues during the pandemic, and then mostly it will be used prospectively. So we will have to see how it's, we'll have more of a discussion. This will come back to council once we have all the rules in.
So Roberto, my understanding is that we will get half of that this fiscal year and half of that next fiscal year.
Okay, no, sounds good. So I think what we'd like to do is have basically a council session once all the rules are in. Everybody's still waiting for those rules to see how we can spend it, what we can spend it on. There's some calculations that we have to go through and then plan it out for the next, well, this year and next year. But that's above and beyond what we have right now. So it is money that will be coming in, and hopefully a lot of it can be spent at council's discretion somewhat.
So,
so these
do we have, is it okay to include the full amount for next year, even though we'll get half this year?
Mayor, if I may,
Yeah.
We have it in there because I haven't received verification that it's going to be split up.
Okay.
We have staff working on attending some seminars about non-entitlement cities this week, which will provide further clarification to that. The other thing I'd like to let council know is staff has already worked and registered through SAMS.gov and obtained our DUNS number, and have most of the preparation done to receive these funds. It had only expired in 2013, so we're only a little bit behind.
So I have heard other entities have received some. So anyway, so that's just a note. I like to be really super cautious on the budget. And having an extra, almost 200K on there.
So we have,
Okay,
we have a couple of weeks until the final budget will come to council,
Got
and when we get the information, we'll adjust accordingly.
it.
Additionally, I think the entitlement cities were the ones that went first.
Yeah, that makes
and,
sense.
got their money, and the process was much clearer at the beginning. But
And so for Kim and Scott, do you guys know what the entitled entities are versus the non-entitled?
Why don't you explain?
Okay. So basically, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it based on population?
it is based on population, mostly based on population.
Over 500K or something?
It's 50,000. The
Oh.
population is 50,000, but there are some cities, and it has to do with CDBG opting out and things
Yep.
like that. The city of Monterey, for instance, I believe is an entitlement city, even though they're under the population, because they've opted out of the different funding mechanisms for other grants. So mostly those over 50 have gotten their directions in what to do, and now those cities under 50 are getting direction here this past week and next week.
The biggest difference is those larger cities will receive their funds directly from federal, whereas our funds will come from, it'll go federal to state and then down to us. So the time, who knows about the timing, but I just want to make sure that we're aware of that. Thank you.
And so this number is here is basically more, it's a placeholder than an actual budget item, because we don't have official word from Department of Finance, how they're doing it, what we can spend it on. So just so you know that there's money is coming. If we get final numbers and everything by the final budget, we will bring that back, but still how it was spent has to come back to council. We have it, there is, as you can see, we don't have any line items for spending it just yet. Just so you know that that's coming. So these are special revenue funds, basically by law required to have accounted for separately. Then we have some capital project funds, which are under accounting guidelines, they're just for major construction projects. A new one this year is this Prop 68 Parks Grant Fund. We're anticipating a grant of 140, well, it'll allow us to spend 177,000 with 141,000 coming from the state and a match from the city. We'll discuss a couple of projects that the manager has in mind, and this is new money again for this year, didn't exist before. The ones that did exist before are the SBR Engineering Fund to do the engineering work for South Boundary Road. This is to cover the contract with Whitson Engineering. We have the money, we have the contract. We need to analyze how this is going to move forward. At this point, I understand things are kind of at a standstill, but the money is there. The other money they gave us was for the South Boundary Road, General Jim Moore intersection, the construction of that road. That's a little over $1 million. When that time comes, this money is sitting here. Well, this one is actually in escrow. And this one, the construction is also in escrow. When the city finally begins to work on these projects, construction costs will be submitted to the title company and they will release the monies to the city to pay the bills. So these are here. Council can't really use it for anything else. It will have an impact on what decisions you make, how you want to build the road, the timing and all that. So as you can tell, before the cities budget used to be pretty much about 4 million. Now, I mean, we have 4.8 coming in, 4.8 in expenditures, and quite a bit of money is sitting there to be spent, but it's not free and clear. It's all tied up in these items, not for general purposes. Okay, so that's the budget by fund. It's balanced. The other way we'd like to take a look at the budget this year is by department. So that rather than looking how much is spent on pencil and paper and gasoline, this is at a little bit larger level here. We'll get into the revenue as we get into the details, but on the expenditure side, these items are also addressed in the staff report. Basically, council is actually just a slight decrease, primarily because there's no election being held this next fiscal year. We had money for an election this year, not next year, the year after that, it'll go back up again to account for the election. The city clerk department is increasing for three things purposely. One is an increase, what's proposed is an increase for the deputy city clerk to bring her up to the previous person that was there, Kimberly Carvalho, is the executive assistant to the city manager. Jeff will talk
Roberto,
more about that.
can you just tell us what that level was?
Basically about $10,000 more than what's
Okay, great.
there right now.
And that goes directly to Karen.
Yes.
Okay. And how
Um,
much does she make now ish? Is it in the
Ooh.
90 range?
Let me look it up. I don't
Okay.
have the exact number, but I can look it
Okay.
up. Maybe by the end of our discussion, I can have the
Okay.
number for you.
Thank you.
So it's to do that. Also adding a full-time
Yes. Okay.
office person there with benefits, and including 25,000 for a part-time office employee. And
And-
Jeff can talk to each of those items as you would like. That those are
Roberto,
the main reasons for the increase.
Roberto, if I may, so the part-time is a placeholder. As we've seen this year, there have been times we've needed a part-time employee. One of those may be perhaps as we move forward in redoing our entire filing system, the administrative files for the city, we may use about 5,000 of that for that particular part-time employee and have the rest as a placeholder should somebody get injured or something like that, not be able to be here at work, just so you know.
And so there's an estimated 25K for that part-time?
Yes, with only 5 that I see allotted at this particular point, Mayor.
Okay. I'm sorry, say that once again. There's only 5K allotted?
Yeah, the only thing I have that I'm planning to utilize out of that fund is to get about 4 weeks, 1 month of a part-time employee to help finish up redoing our administrative files in the city. The rest is a placeholder should we need more part-time help with other projects going
So
forward.
but in the budget, you put in 25K to cover that?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the city clerk's office, and we can get into more details. The city manager's office is an increase of 101,000 because this is you can tell it used to be higher. It was reduced during the pandemic, and with Dino being gone, that was reduced. Now this is to pay for the full-time city manager with salaries and benefits, which the previous city manager did not have. Medical, dental, vision, those sort of things. We budgeted for those here now this year, but that's really all it is just full-time salary and benefits for the city manager. And then we have the details to the numbers. The other increases in the audit treasurer, which is basically for the audit and the accounting services. If it's okay with you, this is what it's been called all along. We'd be tempted to call it finance, just because it covers all the finance functions, including the payment to ADP for payroll services, bank service charges, all the finance functions. It's an increase of 51,400, primarily because of the paying for a full year of financial management services through regional government services. Last year was a partial. I mean, this year, sorry. Kim left in October of this year. So this coming fiscal year will be a full year. And it's the workload has turned out to be a little bit more than was anticipated. But we can also get into more details on that one in a minute.
Okay.
Other than that, the rest of them don't have large increases. Legal is still at a high level because we've had a lot of legal costs. Planning and building, also there's a lot of planning going on, maintaining that about the same level. This is just the utilities for the building and the like. Non-departmental is something we're trying to get rid of. It's just some costs that had no place, but I think we can put them up in another department. Then the major expenses in the police department.
Mhm.
And as you can tell, there's just a slight increase in the police department. So this, what is reflected in the police department, as we get into the details, you'll see is there is a new benefit proposed for the police officers of $300 a month, which would be a contribution to their deferred compensation plan to keep the salaries competitive, but not increase the CalPERS retirement costs. Because anytime salary increase comes along, there's increased retirement costs. This helps them towards their retirement without going through the CalPERS system. So, and the chief can talk more towards that.
Roberto, the only thing I would say, and I'll tell the council, is that we will be doing a salary survey. The police department is falling behind significantly. Their understanding at this point about the pandemic, I think they will be grateful for the 457 contribution. They know that the city cares about them, and we've attracted a really good group, and we want to work hard to keep them. Of course, those conversations will also have to take place with the airport because that impacts our airport services contract costs. And that'll be coming probably late summer, August, September-ish, when we resume after July. The other thing I'll say about pay and benefits, when we look at the city clerk's office, I'll have to do some more in depth, but we no longer have the deputy city clerk assistant to the city manager position. Last year it was changed to a deputy city treasurer position. So Kim's title changed and her scale is different. She has a much different pay scale. I don't know what step Karen will end up when we reinstitute the deputy city clerk assistant to the city manager position with Kim's pay scale, but it'll be as close as we can get it to that $10,000 rate, but not an exact figure. It depends on what step we place her in that new position and title. And currently she's at just over 74,000.
Okay, thank you. So it's a nice raise.
It is,
Yeah.
but well deserved. And
Of course.
And one of the not only because we are working on salary surveys and trying to be competitive, but because she also has taken on a lot of extra duties, and she's the glue that kept us going through this pandemic.
Gotcha.
Okay, so, and keep in mind too, the police department is still one position down from what was originally budgeted. So there is one position vacant, and it's scheduled to be that way. The next item is the fire, which is just the contract services with the city of Seaside to provide fire services. Public Works, a slight increase to restore some of the services, and also an increase for the maintenance worker, highly qualified for what the city has right there. You have an excellent employee, but I'll let the city manager talk more to that. There is an increase budgeted there.
Mayor and council, I think we all know how much work Ron does for our city. I'm currently trying to get his current pay rate calculated here. He's currently at about $66,000. He probably works as hard as two people, so we're getting a great value out of him. And he is the prior to the administrative assistant coming on board, has been our lowest paid employee, but probably the most physically demanding job that we have. I've included approximately $10,000 raise for Ron to put him up to about $75,000, $76,000, and that'll be adjusted with the position control list and salary list for the city.
And then beyond that, we have Parks and Recreation. This is just expenses to maintain the parks, utility costs, things of that nature. That's staying about the same right now. So when you look at the general fund, the proposed budget, it is $365,000, a 10% increase over the current budget. But as you can tell, it's not all an increase, it's just restoration, because we're now budgeting for a full-time city manager, restoring the position that was left vacant when Kim left, and providing an additional benefit to the police officers. But keep in mind, overall, one of the biggest expenses, and we'll talk more in the budget message, is salaries. And there is no cost of living increase in this budget for the staff. We'll talk more about that here in a minute as I get into that. So That's the operating portion. Then there's capital projects within the general fund. This last year, they did this year actually that we're in, it was a slurry seal, 50,000 budgeted for the sewer design and 55,000 for solar panels. This project was done. This project was done. This budget was reduced. The budget numbers that you're seeing here are the ones as of April. All the numbers are run as of April. When we run this as of May, then that actually goes away. But bottom line, there is no projects coming out of the general fund. The projects are now being budgeted in the capital projects funds, as we'll talk about them in a minute. The only thing the general fund is doing is transferring out $35,400 for that parks improvement grant. That's the city's matching share. But the construction takes place in the Prop 68 grant fund. So you're going to start seeing more transfers in and transfers out, but we're trying to keep them to a minimum so that it doesn't get too complicated. But at the end of the day, then we're still at $181,000 surplus for the year compared to what the budget was as of April. That's only, excuse me, not that one. That's, yeah, actually, missed one number here. I apologize. I left out the total revenues and expenditures, which is only like a 3%. Let me bring back the budget message, and it's in here. So the general fund appropriations of $3,953,000 is an increase of $120,000 over the current total appropriations. Let me actually show you right here. I missed this part right here. So this is the operating appropriations. And after you include the capital projects, then the increase is only 2%. Actually, yeah, when you include a 3% increase, when you include the projects, if it's just operations, it's a 10% increase. But because we don't have any projects coming out of the general fund in total, 1 year to the next, it's only a 3% increase. Still, it's a surplus at the end of the day. 181,720 is what's expected to stay there. And the explanations that I mentioned to you, those are in the draft staff report that talks about each of these changes in each of the departments. So now some of the major aspects, because the budget kind of stays consistent year to year, the city's doing the same things. On the revenue side, the only real increase is an increase in revenues of basically primarily due to sales tax. The increase in estimated revenues, 192,000, of which 186.5 is sales tax, is now we're starting to return to the pre-pandemic levels. It's not that we're getting a whole bunch more sales tax, it's just that it's starting to come back, which had, we had to reduce the budget this current fiscal year because the money wasn't coming in. Now we're going back to the pre-pandemic levels. That's really the only revenue at this point that's seeing growth. The other one, there's minor numbers, and we'll look at those in the details. On the expenditure side, so we're anticipating a surplus, and we'll talk about how to allocate that here in a second. The other major changes, which we kind of talked about, and you'll see in the line items, what's included new in the budget this year. This is just new highlighted items. We're asking $25,000 to update the city's personnel manual. It is very antiquated, and there's $5,000 for records retention schedule, $15,000 for HR contract services, and $10,000 for organic waste regulations that are new. This is the project. The construction projects is $50,000 for work on Portola walkway and some curb improvements, along with $177,000 for the park improvements from the grants, and the $25,000 for a part-time employee. And Jeff, I don't know if do you want to talk a little bit more about these items up here?
Sure. As the council has already seen, we've had items come before the council for the personnel manual update, the information item, and also the records retention schedule. Those were items on our strategic objective list from our February strategic planning to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the city's operations. We've put in a little bit for HR contract services the last couple of years. We have needed some help. One year it was budgeted, another year it wasn't. We would like to have some in there in case we need some consulting, depending on which issues come up. We have a much bigger police department and a much larger staff, consequently, and HR issues do come up from time to time. The organic waste regulation is for SB 1383, which is a mandate by the state to reduce the flow of organic waste materials into landfills and reduce that by 75% by 2025. It requires some monitoring, compliance, code, municipal code ordinance drafting. If we're to do this ourselves, it would be cost prohibitive. We've been working with the Waste Management District, all the member agencies, and we'll be bringing forth, hopefully on the 22nd, an MOU with the Waste Management District, and that would be our proportional shared costs to handle many of those tasks. It's flipping lids on trash cans along the routes and contracting with a third party to do that, to make sure that businesses and residents are in compliance with those things, education-based stuff, drafting of building of the draft ordinances for municipalities to use, and those things will be done by the Waste Management District, and those are our costs. I'm working on what projected future costs would be. I'm hoping this is with about half of that being paid by revenue overages at the Waste District. About $140,000 is reducing our cost. It would probably be closer to 20. However, some of these things are just one-time things, such as the drafting of ordinances. And on our TAC committee meeting later in the week, I will be trying to find out and nail down what those would be moving forward yearly. I suggest that they will be hopefully slightly or much lower. The work Portola Walkway, I've had discussions with the planning analysts, with the state that distribute and approve the SB1, the RMRA, and maybe that's what we can call it, Roberto RMRA for the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Act instead of SB1. Our RMRA funding, it appears that under one of the project types, we should be able to use that money for the walkway because we can articulate that it increases pedestrian safety in our city, allows people to get through town without walking on streets without sidewalks. And hopefully we'll have that done, and it'll be a fully repaved concrete retaining wall, professional walkway that should last decades. And I think we've explained all the other stuff, including the park improvements. And I believe the mayor and myself both agree that we should probably be looking at, once that starts moving forward, looking at a study session or a work group on how exactly we want to allocate those park funds and what projects we would like to do moving forward. And just so you know, we would do several projects. We would pay for those up front. And then at the end, once we've spent as much as we can out of that 177, we would submit all of those projects under one contract to the state for reimbursement at that time, once all the projects were done. And that's kind of just a very high level overview of how that program works. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
So I just want to note that, so will the organic waste regulation be an ongoing charge from here on out?
Yes, there will be some, Mayor. Every year we're going to have a contract with a third party, or the Waste District is going to have a contract with a third party compliance, inspector to be flipping lids and things like that. And that's what I'm going to try and nail down this week, is what does the future look like going forward. But I do believe it's going to be less, even if the Waste District doesn't fork over half of the money for it like it did this year.
Is it possible in this description that you could divide those costs that are one-time, one-year costs with those that are ongoing?
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that. And in the TAC meeting, I'm hoping to get a further explanation of that.
Okay.
Things such as crafting the ordinance and
Oh, I'm just
doing-
talking about the budget message.
right.
Okay.
Right. No, I'm just giving you an example of a one-time cost would be the crafting of the budget or the ordinance. And I don't know how much it's broken down in the MOU. I just don't have the MOU in front of me. And I
Okay.
just want to make sure the district's anticipated costs moving forward before I speak to it, finitely.
Actually, what I was thinking was divide the one-time cost of that entire list, not just the organic waste.
Oh, all of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that way people can see, okay, HR will keep going on, the waste will keep going on, and the part-time employee will keep going on. Whereas all of the others are one-time expenses.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is just a quick recap of some of the major items as regards to personnel costs. Just at a very high level, just a reminder, there is no cost of living increase. There is merit step increases though for 5 positions in the police department that still have step increases left. Salary increase for the deputy city clerk, a salary increase for the maintenance worker, and we are keeping 1 police position vacant at this point. As far as the personnel costs, some of the other ones we have no control over. CalPERS, the retirement cost, all those things, the city has no control over. Just pay what they say. Regarding the capital improvements, as was mentioned, we do have capital projects of $232,000 at this point, $35,000 for the walkway, and $50,000 for curb replacements, and then $177,000 for the park improvements. And these are not funded by the general fund. We're using the SB1 RMRA and then Prop 68. And even with all of that, there is a surplus of 181.7, which at this point, staff would recommend to continue the plan to keep putting 150,000 aside to continue funding the CalPERS liability so that at the end of 10 years, basically it would be funded. We would not have turned the money over to CalPERS, but we'd have enough money to cover that if necessary. And then the difference can go into the economic uncertainty reserve, assuming that the budget worked out as proposed. If it doesn't, then of course we wouldn't have these monies, but just so there's some thought given to how the surplus could be spent.
Roberto, and maybe Jeff knows this, how is the Section 115 trust, how are the returns on that? I know that, what level of aggressiveness of funds are we in?
If I remember correctly, it is like a medium, medium risk, because this is more long-term, because the investment is long-term. It's not, retirement costs are going to be there for a long time. So it's not the risky one, and it's not the super conservative. It's somewhere middle of the road is what the council chose at one time. So we can give you a little bit more detail about it, but this is just placing the money aside.
I'm just curious as to the returns. I know that we voted on it, but I'm just curious as to how things are going.
Okay. All right. Yep. No, because one thing is what they said, and one other one is it's actually coming out. So yeah, we will let you know what the return is on those. But just for everybody's information, so this money is not paid to anybody. We're just taking this money and moving it, investing it at a higher rate to try and match the liability that is owed to CalPERS for retirement costs.
Okay.
Let's see so that's basically it. We have, we're going to go into the details, but when you do get the budget, there'll be the budget, the salary schedule, position control, and appropriations limit. Now, one thing I'm wondering about is you've always had a promotional fund. I don't know if you still want to continue going with that. I think that's the one for the mayor's cost. I got to take a look and see exactly what that is. And then the one item we haven't talked about is the fee schedule. So I'm not sure if council's going to be addressing an increase or leave a fee schedule the way it is for next year. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, Roberto, we do have a draft fee schedule that I'm still working on with Denise Duffy and Associates. I don't know if we'll have it completely done by June 22nd, but it is something I plan on bringing to the council sometime this year to either adopt perhaps mid-year or an amendment. Our fees are behind in several areas and are very low compared to other cities, and they are close in some areas to other cities. I just need to do a little more discussion and meeting with Denise Duffy and Associates to see what reasonable fees would be in some areas.
Okay, so that's the staff report. We will add more information based on the few comments that we've heard here for the next go round. And before we get into the actual nitty gritty of some of the numbers, is there any questions about what you've heard so far?
Yeah, hey, Roberto, it's Scott Donaldson. Just real quick, where is the money budgeted to pay back federal development? And how much is that we owe them?
Okay, so that money is not budgeted at this point. There's nothing budgeted to pay them back. They are, let me see if I can look it up real quick. But at this point, keep in mind, the city doesn't have to pay them back until property is sold out there and developed, at which point then the money does have to be paid back. The thought does keep coming back about trying to pay some of that. Right now, let me look at the audit real quick and I can tell you what the amount is. That's audited.
I think it's about 1.4. We asked that last time. And Scott, do you understand the mechanics of the repayment plan?
Well, from what I understand, based on what Roberto said, is until we sell it, we're not obligated to pay back.
Correct. But we have been looking at ways to pay it back. But generally how it works is the first $500,000 is not being charged interest. But it's being charged on the 700 on top of. So, and you have to pay the 500K off first. So there are some nuances involved that I wanted to make sure you understood.
So this is the, from the audit. You can see that the city is doing quite well. FORA, this is at June 30th, 2020. FORA was paid off, so all the FORA debt went away. There's 1.2 million in the actual original principal, but the interest keeps growing about 45,000 a year. So there's 242,000 in accrued interest, which is the 1.4 Mayor was talking about. And then of course we have the
Roberto,
Measure X loan.
where is that reflected, that interest that we continue to compound?
It's in the audit.
Yeah, that is the only place that shows up.
Yep.
Okay.
We're not budgeting at this point to pay anything. And that's a possibility, but that's something that does need to be addressed at some point in time because they are charging, I forget their interest rate is.
I think it's 5%.
How much?
I want to
Yeah,
say
5%.
but I could be, yeah.
Yeah, no, 5% on the 700,000.
Oh, excuse me, 700, right. So the 500 isn't and the 700 is.
Yeah.
And how much so far have we accrued, Roberto? I saw it up there, but what?
Yeah, up to now, 242,000 since 2014.
Since 2014, you said?
I believe that's when this thing started. I forget the date. Starting, beginning June 1, 2014. It started accruing interest at 5%.
Okay. And then, it's kind of a minor thing, but on the summary, we mentioned the solar panel project in there. Is there a line that shows the benefit that we will ultimately be getting from those panels?
There isn't, but we can certainly look at that because what it is the PG&E cost should be decreasing.
Mhm.
And
Right.
We can, let me make a note on that to see what the impact is from that. Let me make this up a note here. Okay, yeah, we will report that in the next go round here as we improve on this.
And then Roberto, also in the summary with our South Boundary Road funding, the first part, so it's fund number 321. Is that just the contract we have with Whitson?
Let's see, 321. Yeah, that's just to cover the contract with Whitson.
Got it. And the 322 and 323 are for the actual construction.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Those are all the general questions I had. You answered a lot of the other ones, Roberto, so great job going through that. But I do have some further questions as we kind of get into the details.
Okay.
So can we, is it possible to address Stacy's concern? Stacy, you are welcome to stay with us as long as you'd like, but you know, it sounds like we're going to go for a little while, and I'm wondering if we could address that.
Mayor, you know, my plan is I got Stacy's requests and just have not been able to coordinate with Roberto. And if it's the pleasure of the council, I was going to work with Roberto to put that into our, you know, our contributions line item or whatever line item that we historically use, but maybe even create a new one so it's relatively clear where
Yes.
that goes. Also, pardon me, the same for our community human services folks as well. They just last minute things that we're collecting and coordinating along with that one contract for the police department for RIPA. And again, as noted, I would say it's probably going to be about a $10,000 increase with those three items. If you would allow me, I'd like Randy to share an item on the screen. In addition to making the line items clearer, one of the things that staff has been working on, and this is just a draft, we've only started filling it in. Randy, if you can scroll down, this is a description of each line item budget. And if you want to stop there, if you'll look, those are our billing, our billing line items where the accounts come out of. Each one of those, and of course, these are easy, medical insurance, it makes sense, but it tells you we have 14 full-time employees, and it's a combination of employee and partner and employee and full family plans through our PERS medical. When we get down to, other items such as public safety lease equipment, we'll put more descriptions into those items so that council and the public will know exactly what is in those line items. And we're hoping to have this on June 22nd, filled in. And of course, it is a living document and it'll change as our budget changes, but it gives a little bit more depth and clarity to each of those line items. And like I said, hopefully we'll have that by the 22nd as part of the budget presentation. And I think it's something that council's been asking for, is a little more clarity on the line items. Contracts or dues and contributions, those are the things where you'll see more detail and where it's more important than, say, dental. But thank you, Randy. Roberto, I'm sorry.
So Jeff, to that point, and it's kind of to Stacy's point, that line item number of members, dues, and contributions, you're basically going to be able to break out what agencies are essentially getting money from us, right?
Well, yes, and that that probably won't be in members, dues, and contributions. That it may be in another one. We're cleaning up to put like items in similar lines, and we haven't done that for years, and we're getting better, and we have the last couple of years, but this is an attempt to get it a little bit closer, and we'll do so the next budget process as well, Scott.
Okay, but from what I understand, that's where it is right now, right? Where those contributions are going are reflected in that line item right now. Maybe it has other stuff in there is what you're saying, but it is
Yeah,
that where it's reflected?
And to be honest, Councilmember Donaldson, I can't say for sure on a lot of those things because they haven't been parsed out. What we'll be doing this next week as we get closer to the end of the final budget presentation at the end of the fiscal year, we're going to go through those line items and actually see what was paid out of those line items to try and document those, accurately. The other issue is that has changed over the last couple of years. I've seen it in one line item one year and it's in a completely different line item the next year, depending on how it was coded. And we've also worked on those procedures with RGS and our contract with them. That is we have a much better process for that now. So
Okay,
So
thanks,
Scott, there's two different pots of money for community human services. One is a membership because we're part of their JPA. And then the other is an actual donation. So yes, there a lot of, very early on, it was part of members' dues and contributions. And I have asked for that over the last couple of years to be teased out and to moved into the different departments, which is what we're seeing now. So there is a community human services line as well as the membership dues. So they are appropriate in different ways, but it's the same organization.
and we're hoping that spreadsheet or that chart that we're making will help clarify that. So you can just refer to that in the future and it'll make it a lot easier to understand.
So that said, I would like to see two documents. One is the membership dues and contributions list, as well as the airport true up. I believe based on the contract, we're a little late on that. So I want to make sure that the council gets as much opportunity to take a look at that before, because I know the airport's also doing their budget stuff.
Yes, Mayor, we will work on the membership dues and contributions. I have some other information about the true up. And I think there needs to be some clarification in the agreement because the true up I don't think is accurately reflected. And I'll be glad to talk to you offline when I'm prepared. Roberto and I had this conversation yesterday about accurately reflecting whose costs go where. And the document that we received from the auditor about the airport true up, I think doesn't accurately reflect the spirit of the contract, although it may be acceptable in the contract. There are some things I think we need to clear up with the airport district, and I'll be glad to explain it to you and the other council members when I speak to them individually. And I'm working on it this week, and Roberto is actually working on it today.
But I also think I do believe, I mean, I need to reread the contract, but I do think we need to take a look at those numbers before the council meeting.
Right. No, we're working on that right now. We're putting together a report based upon what the true up from the auditor says and what we think more accurately reflects what should be happening with the billing and an explanation why.
Okay. Thank you. So I have a gazillion little teeny nitpicky things in the nitty gritty. So whenever we're ready to go there, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, well, let's go there then. Let me bring that up and let's see, share screen. So this is the revenue. We're starting with the revenues.
Okay.
The main increases in the revenues, there's slight property taxes has been going up a little bit. Other things have been staying flat. Property tax, vehicle lines, BLF, which comes through the state. We're expecting to get a little increase in that.
So Roberto, can you talk about that? And because I'm seeing the shift from 1920 to 2021 as an increase. And you know, traditionally we increase it accordingly. And so I'm wondering where the 166 came from. It seems like it could be easily 175.
It could be, but we have no idea. This is part of what was famously called the triple flip. The state took money, everybody was involved. Money was moved around between, the cities used to get vehicle license fees, motor vehicle license fees directly. And then the state took that and said, instead, we will trade you some property taxes for that money down the road. And that is what they're doing, but it comes out of a little complicated formula that the state is the one that calculates it.
Okay.
The ways are provided. This is not one like property tax. We know it's got to go up at least 2%.
Yeah.
This one, as you can tell, it had a wide swing, and we, at least personally, on the conservative side, we should get 166 because we got that this year. What we will get next year, I don't really know. So we've been budgeting based on whatever we've gotten in the past. We will take that number, but we don't have a clear projection that it's going to go up 3% or 5%.
Got it.
It's a statewide formula.
Okay, no problem. And on the sales tax add-on, the 837 feels a little high to me.
It does to me too, but that's what HDL says we can expect, that we should be able to get that amount. These are their numbers, and they are the sales tax folks that review all the city's numbers, they give us a projection. So they are the experts. I'm going by their projection rather than mine. We will see how accurate it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And maybe it has to do with you know, a COVID influence maybe. But you know, one of the things that I've been asking for, and I think others have been asking for, is kind of a ranking, for lack of a better word, of our businesses in terms of their contribution of sales tax. And I'm hoping to get that before the council meeting. Now, Roberto, does our contracted firm, do they provide that, or is that something that you can provide? How can we get that? I know that the actual numbers, we're not allowed to have those publicly available, but that ranking, what's the possibility of getting that?
So based on your question, we could probably give you a ranking of like maybe the top 5 businesses, but we can't tell you, you know, this one is, you know, by far and above the biggest one, and then this one and this one, or what percentage they each contribute. But we can tell you which ones are the top sales tax generators without the dollar amounts.
Yeah, I guess I'm not looking for, you know, specifics like that, but if we could rank them, you know, this is the top producer of sales tax revenue, and then this business is next, and so on. I think that would be helpful.
Roberto, if I may, and for the mayor and for the council member, a month and a half, 2 months ago is when I had our tax update from HDL. The increase is from their projection, and it is based on COVID recovery and some of the trends that they are seeing coming out of COVID and their projections with those increases. As far as the rankings and the amounts for taxes, a lot of that is very confidential. And there are also, even when we speak of rankings, because the city has so many or so little businesses, they can tell you in kind, like if they have more than 4, they can release that information based on how many businesses you have. So the more businesses you have, the more data they can give you. But when we have very limited business, say one grocery store, they can't really give you the income of a grocery or the tax income from grocery stores because we only have one. So I'll work with HDL. I'll see the most broken down tax data that we can get for you, and I'll see if I can do it by June 22nd. But it will be a little more limited than you probably would like, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, no problem, Jeff. Anything would be helpful. And on the sales tax, in terms of cannabis, I know it relates to the item below, but do we only get sales tax? I just want to verify this. We only get sales tax from our retail business, which is the dispensary. That's the only one. Am I correct?
No, we do get sales tax from our other businesses.
Okay, and so what's that based on? Is it a wholesale rate? I mean, what's the basis for that?
I'd have to look at our, I think it's just the same as our retail. I don't think the council, although I don't know 100%, I don't think the council adopted any different type of taxing mechanism. Some, like in the county, they do in some areas on a square footage basis and things like that with manufacturing or growing. But I think it's just on the same rate across the board.
Okay, if I could just get some detail on that, whether or not it's our manufacturers or just our retail business, anything, Jeff, that you can provide on that would be helpful.
Yeah, we get taxed from all of our cannabis businesses. That's why we've had certain discussions about I-squared and tax deferrals and things like that, and they're not a retail.
Right, I'm just talking sales tax specific, and not the line below it, the cannabis tax, which I also have a question about. What's the basis for that too? The actual cannabis tax.
What do you mean
Not the sales tax.
Scott? What do you mean the
Yeah,
basis?
so what is there a certain percentage that each of our businesses are required to pay? I mean, what's it based on? I mean, sales tax is sales tax based on a certain percentage and how much they pay out. What is our cannabis tax based on is my question.
We can certainly provide that to you. I hate to give answers without researching, but I believe it's about 5% of their sales, but we will look that number up to give you the exact percentage.
It is
Correct.
5%. It is 5%.
It is a
What's the
sales tax.
lowest?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, because I know you've looked into this. It is a sales tax. It's just parsed out from our regular sales tax, so we know what the income revenue is from our cannabis businesses.
It is 5%, and it's lower than anyone else.
Okay, so then that said, is the sales tax that's reflected in a line item above subtracted out that 5%? In other words, I think we're at 9.75 on sales tax. Is that 5% taken out of that as it applies to our cannabis businesses?
Is the 5% taken out?
Correct. So in other words, in that line item,
Which line item? The cannabis or the add-on? Or
the cannabis tax is at 5%.
Yeah.
So that tax is reflected there.
Yes.
The rest of the sales tax that is paid, which I think it's 9.75,
Yes.
is that 4.75 then reflected in the line above it? In other words, is it split out?
Got it. I hear you.
Okay,
That's a good question.
Councilmember Donaldson, if I may, and Jeff, if I could reply back briefly, we will include a full detailed explanation so that you have this, directly from the language that enabled all of these. But just off the top of my head, the cannabis tax is local tax that the city's collecting 5% on. Same as Seaside, everybody taxes their cannabis businesses at whatever rate they want to. So that's 5% here locally. That has nothing to do with the sales tax. The sales tax is imposed by the state. Of that sales tax, the city gets 1% of that 9.75. Well, the regular tax rate is 1%. Then we have the add-on taxes, which is another 1.5%. But that's applied based on how the state regulates sales tax, whereas the cannabis tax is strictly here locally. And I forget who it applies to. There's differences. Well, we can get all that for you, but it is not subtracted from the sales tax. The sales tax is the sales tax, and cannabis tax is cannabis tax. And we'll give you a more detailed explanation.
Got it, Roberto. That will be very, very helpful. So it's not like the mayor implied. It's a separate piece.
Well, the cannabis tax is a separate tax.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's on top of the 9%.
Okay, but you
Yes.
implied that it was a portion of it.
No, I don't. I mean, that wasn't my intent.
But yeah, I'm clear on it now. Yeah, very, very helpful to get that information, Roberto. Thanks.
Okay, yep, we will add that.
So tied to the cannabis tax, Jeff, I noticed that you didn't add in the cannabis tracking that we talked about from the county. Okay.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I've requested a couple of demonstrations by them, and I had to reschedule once, and they had to reschedule. So I don't know the exact costs, and
Okay.
I've reached out to them to reschedule it. And if it seems like it's something that we'll use, I'll bring it forth later, and we'll find some money somewhere. But I just don't have enough detail. We haven't had a chance to do their breakdown.
Okay. So are we done with cannabis tax? Kim, do you have any questions, comments?
Nope. I'm just enjoying this conversation. Thank you.
So my next question about cannabis is, we have deferred taxes. Where are those if they are on this document?
Right, go ahead, Jeff.
I don't think we put the deferred taxes in there
Okay.
at this point. A couple of reasons. One, it's not known income at this point. Number two, the deferral was for the length of the emergency. That depends on what the state regulations are, and when that is, declared, where we're no longer in an emergency. Of course, as you know, we have a local emergency declaration, and that has to stay in place so that we can receive federal money like the ARPA funding. So since it is not a known income at this point, it's not included. It is something that we will hopefully have more clarification on when we meet with our company that has that deferral in place. We're hoping to meet with them this week, and I'm looking forward to getting an update to where they are and if they've recovered and what their plan is to start repaying taxes.
So this could be included before the council meeting? Or you would have,
Possibly. I mean, I would hate to put that amount in as income
Yeah.
and rely on it when we don't know if that particular business is recovering at all. So I would rather be conservative and wait to find out. And if we do receive it, then that's a bonus and it puts us in a better light. But I don't think we should rely on that right now, Mayor. And again, we have a meeting set up with them. We're working on setting up a meeting with them. Karen called them yesterday to set up a meeting. So I will have more information, and if there's some clarity, then perhaps the budget may be adjusted. But at this point,
okay,
I don't think it'd be appropriate.
no worries.
Okay, then on, that said, Roberto, so you account on a cash basis, not an accrual basis, right?
Yes,
Okay, so that's why that's not reflected in there, but it goes to, I had a question on it. You look at the 300,000 versus 637,000, and I'm just wondering why that's so low. Is it that we've had the dispensary out of business for a while, the other companies aren't doing so well? How is that reflected?
There's also increased competition.
Yeah, historically,
Yeah.
the high of our, well, no pun intended, the high point of our cannabis tax revenue was close to $1 million, I want to say in 16, 17. And we've consistently, since it has become, since recreational use has become legal and more cannabis businesses have opened up, it's a pretty steady decline to just over 300,000 this past year, not including, of course, the tax deferral. We're just being very careful and not projecting high amounts of tax income in that particular line item. The change in ownership at our dispensary, we're waiting on, more solid numbers and over a little bit longer period of time to see how they're doing. and what we can project their taxes to be, as well as a business that may go out of business and impact that line item. So we're just being very conservative, and hopefully we'll get better news as the pandemic moves along.
What's the latest on Sparks?
They had their inspection, I believe, and we're
A new
looking.
company, yeah,
Yes.
that hasn't, right.
Yes, and they have been in touch with Joe Headley, I believe a couple of weeks ago. We put them in touch with each other, and am waiting to run down there or at least call them and see if they're starting operations.
Okay.
But they have that new company did clear them, and it was just a question of Joe going and reviewing that.
Gotcha. Business gas.
Hey, Jeff, I had a question for you. It's about the transient occupancy taxes. Just kind of I'm just trying to figure out whether or not we monitor those units that are out there. Is anybody monitoring like the Airbnb sites to make sure that we're maximizing our collection on those?
Yes,
Those short-term rentals?
Yeah, we do checks, and we get listings of whenever they renew their licenses, their permits. We get a listing of every website that they're listed on, and we do those checks and we update them, and sometimes we'll do spot checks, mostly based on complaints or activity where a neighbor calls and they're saying, hey, they're running an Airbnb. I don't think they have a license, and of course we'll pull the files and we'll do the checks, and yeah, we do, but we don't have staff doing it full time. I mean that's not like,
yeah, I know that's
business weekly basis.
Yeah, I know that's tough just because we're so limited and everything. It's just that I've received feedback from some of our residents that maybe we're missing out on some opportunities there. And yeah, that's always a tough one because we're limited on staff. I know that, but that might be an area that we kind of start taking a look at. Absolutely.
One of the things I will say is it is a rather small tax, and we try and allocate staff time to the priorities of the more expensive things, so to speak, in a simplistic way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely understand.
So continuing down the list, my next one is it was just a question on the cannabis business permit. Are you guesstimating we're going to have an additional one this year? I mean, because the budget's the same, or are we missing one from this year?
Which line are you talking about?
Cannabis business permit, halfway down the very first page. It went from 1920, so we budgeted 35, but we've only gotten 30. Are we missing one for this year? I
don't think we're missing one. Let me check with Karen.
Okay.
It's either 30 or 35. This past year may have been budgeted for 35 because we had transfer of fee, the transfer of businesses, and that may just be an accounting of permits mistake. Let me find out. I'll ask right now.
Okay. I just want to make sure if we're either 30 or 35, and then we can shift that one way or the other.
And I actually had a similar question, but it was a line item above on the business licenses. It looks like
the permit.
No, the business licenses. And it looks like the amounts have pretty much stayed the same. I mean, how many businesses did we lose during COVID?
Well, it looks like we didn't lose any.
Right. That's what I'm looking at as well. But I
Scott,
thought we maybe lost a couple.
But Scott, we have. And so what these numbers don't reflect is the implications of losing Stone Creek, Subway, and I think there was another one in by the Moose. And so next year, I am not convinced we're going to make quite as much, but you know, it's okay.
We also, I think business licenses will remain pretty static because we have outside businesses that do business in the city that have to obtain
Got it.
licenses. So
Mhm.
any contractor that comes in or other, business that wants to work here in the city has to come to us. So I think that'll be static because the business license is the business license. It may impact taxes. However, we have an increase, in Safeway, of course, because they're, during a pandemic, grocery stores were very busy. And the cannabis business license answer is it should be 30, Mayor. As
Okay.
I thought, it was because when they transferred the license, they had to pay that the cannabis license.
So we need to change that next year's to 30 as well.
Now, 35 is correct for this year. It'll be 30 for this next year.
But the proposed budget says 35.
I just changed it to
changed
30.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I wanted to make sure we're on the same.
35 was accurate for last year because we had the license was transferred to Delray Farms.
Super. And further down the road, or the line, rental airport RV. Are we on track to get 35K this year?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So the money they've been paying, so we should get there.
Okay.
And if I may, just to, if you don't mind, if I can just backtrack a little bit for the business license and just to put that one to bed. So keep in mind that while you may have lost some businesses, the business license tax itself, what did I do with it? It is based on basically a percentage of gross receipts. So some of the larger businesses in town that were not affected, well, actually were affected positively by the pandemic because they were businesses that people had to go to buy things such as groceries. Those did quite well, and that's what the tax is based on.
Got it.
Their gross receipts.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And my next question has to do with revenue that is tied to specifically the police department. So for example, we have in the general fund COP monies and other grants, and I'm wondering, I want to make sure that all the funding that comes in for our police is taken off of, our portion of the airport agreement.
It is not included in the airport agreement.
It is not included. No, from our perspective, from our side, I want to make sure that our half has these fundings taken out of it. So that the grants and the police income is tied to our portion of the police services. So
And if I may, Mayor, just to restate the question or your comment, but basically the airport is paying for half of the airport police services, regardless of how much grant money we get for the police department or fees or revenues. That does not count. The only thing that counts is the expense side of the police department. They
but
pay
I
half
want
of
to
that.
make sure from our end, I guess it doesn't matter if the money's coming in and the money's going out. I was just hoping along the line as we align the various departments that income, especially the police, because there's other items, police services and reports. Can that be,
We don't share any of the revenue. We only share the cost, Mayor.
got it. Okay. That's what I want to hear. And what are restitutions? Page 2, right, one line above total non-department specific.
I believe that's the former city manager. Is that correct, Roberto?
Yes, that is a new line item. The 948 was the first payment that we received. This one is, we're budgeting not conservatively, but we're expecting if we got paid everything, we'll see. Fortunately, it's not a huge amount that It's not going to make or break the city, but we're budgeting as if we were to receive everything that we're entitled to. And this will be ongoing for a few years.
Okay, so that's the Dawson payment. Wow, okay.
Allison, if it's all right, can I go back to the previous page, just on the Fora caretaker grant, which is third from the
Yep.
bottom on the previous. Is there an expense line item for that as well, Roberto?
If you look, that was, 2 years ago. We haven't gotten that for a while, so it's not, we're not getting it going forward.
It ended when Fora ended. 1920 was the last year for the Fora caretaker grant.
Okay, got it.
Did you have anything else on revenue, Scott?
No, I didn't. Thanks.
Kim, I saw you left and came back. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns on the revenue portion? Kim? Ms. Shirley, can you hear us? Am I muted?
No, I can hear you, Mayor. Kim, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Excuse me.
The mayor was asking, we couldn't tell if you could hear, the mayor was asking if you had any questions on the revenue portion of the.
Yeah, no, my computer just crashed on me, so I just came back. I'm good, thanks.
Okay. So can we launch into expenses?
Certainly.
Okay. Just little things like strategic planning, I think should be 11,000 instead of 10.
Okay.
And I just
And I
want
guess my question would be, why is that?
well, because if you look at the 1920 actual, it was closer to 11,000.
And part of me, I mean, we pay a lot of money for that, and I don't know how much we get out of that. And maybe that's something that we as a council can take a look at how that's facilitated. I mean, that's just my thoughts. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. I love having conversations about strategic planning.
Yeah, I do too. I'm more thinking about the way we go about it. But anyways, that's just maybe a conversation for a later time as we start getting into strategic planning again.
Of course. Okay. So that was it on the total council for me. I did want to note for everybody that the increase in the council member stipend is because I donated mine last year to the city, not knowing about the pandemic. So that increase is, I've asked for my, for that back this year.
And with the stipends, is that reflected on a W-2 or is that a 1099 type of situation?
Well, what did we just get?
I mean, being new, I guess it's.
Oh, that's right. You didn't get one this year. I want to say it's a W-2.
I think it's a W-2.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Because
And then on the PERS retirement, that previous charge, is that, I guess wasn't quite sure what that went towards.
the 493.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 493 was a miscode to this line item in 1920, which, as you can tell, there's quite a few line items that don't show up anymore. There were some miscodes that don't belong here. They showed up here in 1920, but they're not. Little by little, we're trying to clean this up a little bit more.
Yes.
And Roberto, if I may, sorry, Councilmember Donaldson, one of the things that we're working on with the budget is the way our budget software was set up. And Roberto and I had this discussion, and we're working on that too. Every month we have there are some mistakes you'll see in line items that get pointed out. And part of that is because the software was allowed to allow mistakes. And Roberto and I are working on planning, correct me if I'm wrong, Roberto, is to take that out of the system so mistakes won't be allowed. They'll have to be addressed and correct it immediately, and they won't get through, so that we have, spend less time fixing those mistakes. And Roberto knows the technical aspect of that a lot better than I do.
Great. I'm really grateful for, kind of fielding all these things and making things as clean and transparent as possible.
So the other question I had, you've got dental expense for city council. I mean, it's real small, but you don't show any going forward. Is that part of that
Yeah.
accounting piece? Okay.
So I'm guessing 3,500 for that. I don't know how.
So if you look a little bit further down, you'll see there's, it was broken out at one time. This is again part of the problem. That line shows 3,000, but if you look down a little bit further, 2 rows down, there's another dental expense, which is where
Got it.
Okay.
it's actually budgeted. It's we're trying to get things lined up here.
Got it. Yeah, I understand.
Roberto, when can those old lines leave?
I mean, they can leave anytime. It's just that we were showing 1920 actuals. If we just show you the budget, then a lot of these will disappear. The 1920 actuals is where some of these errors exist. Well, that's where the majority of them exist.
So like next year, we won't have as many.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Ideally, you shouldn't have any as we clean this up.
Perfect. Kim, any?
Nope. No. Yeah, I just see community human services, but I'm assuming that's going to be fixed.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually tied to that, this is the council expenses, so I'm guessing it's not going to go under here. But yeah, we will get a list, and they will be included in it as to where those are going to be divided.
Okay, so what department does the Gathering for Women come out of then? That donation?
I'm going to ask. Roberto.
So we will move some of these things to what's called non-departmental. It doesn't belong to any department. It's just something that the city is done citywide. So we'll move all of these down there, and we will provide an itemized listing of everything that the city contributes towards.
Right. So moving on to the next, looks like city clerk. So walk me through the payroll numbers. I'm assuming 19 and 20 was Kim and Roberto.
19 and 20 was Kim. Payroll wise, that was Kim and Karen.
Oh, Kim and Karen. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not on the city's payroll.
Oh, got it. Okay. So that was Kim and Karen, and then, okay, halftime here. So 141. Okay. And so does the 141, 100 now include Randy and Kim?
And Karen. Randy
I'm
and
sorry,
Karen.
and Karen. Sorry. So Randy
Yes.
and Karen. Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay. And then the temp payroll is what we were talking about.
Yes.
And then on the next page, liability prop non-debt, which is, I don't know, 10 lines down.
Under which department?
City clerk, still up above.
Still city clerk. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So liability, do you see it? Okay. Why
Yes.
the decrease?
So this is coming from Invasia.
Okay.
They calculate the premiums for liability and for workers' comp. Workers' comp was definitely a decrease. In this case, it's probably just, I have to look at it, it decreased, but not much. It's more the allocation. This is not the entire premium. It's allocated to each department, so everybody gets his share.
And we base that on the risk of the department. So, your police department liability, could be higher than your city clerk.
Yeah. Yes, as I would suspect. So there's an additional contract services for HR in here for $40,000. Can you answer that? 25 personnel manual. Got it. Okay. And so that's one-time use. Municipal code services for $5,000. If we're going to redo the code, it feels like we need, I don't know, 15.
Muni Code does all our, they do, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, that's, I believe that is our web hosting and
It
there's
is.
a couple other things in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Muni code updates the ordinances.
right. And I don't know if they, Karen, do you know how they bill on that when we send them ordinances?
I do not. I
So
can find out though.
we're in the midst of gathering. I mean, I would like to see a large municipal code overview or overhaul, including things such as gender neutrality and things like that. Do we know how much that would cost on top of? I don't know how you, if you just send in an ordinance.
We
But-
do.
Okay.
We literally, every quarter, we send in any ordinances that we've passed,
Okay.
and they are responsible for updating our municipal code.
Okay. So you haven't gone in and asked them just to edit something?
I can't recall that. We usually send in the code and the
Yeah.
editing is usually done by either Alex or, the subject matter expert for that particular code.
Yeah.
I still would like to see a little more in that.
We
But
can certainly increase that a little bit, Mayor, and then I can do some research.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
And
And that's
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, why don't we just make it 10,000 for now as a placeholder?
That's great.
And then if it's something, a vast change to the Muni Code, we will probably take 6 months to get to that and do it all anyway, so we can do it in mid-year budget adjustment if it's appropriate at that time.
Perfect. That's all I have for city clerk. Kim, Scott?
Nope, you covered it all for me.
Okay. Scott?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So let's move on to city manager. I have 500. Okay. So again, I mean, really for me, there's an assumption with all of these, which I'm fine with. And so I'm guessing the liability prop non-department is the same thing, right? It's an adjustment about, I mean, that's a significant increase. But is that simply a matter of dividing them up?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm good with city manager.
And we'll get a breakdown of that members' dues and contributions in that section too.
Yes.
Okay.
Scott?
No, I don't have anything.
Audit treasurer. My question had to do with the 180 is pretty significant increase. No offense, Roberto.
Yeah, no, none taken. So if I may, and then Jeff can jump in, the original number was just covering October through June when Kim was gone. And it was based on the fact that we were told it would probably only take about 20 hours a week. That has not been the case. It's taken considerably more, and it's every month there's been a few items that had to be fixed. So we've looked at what it takes on a regular monthly basis, and it's down below 15, just slightly below 15. So this is basically 15,000 a month. What we'd like to do is spend the upfront at the beginning of the year just cleaning up things. We've been trying to stay kind of under the radar, trying to keep the costs as low as we can, but there's recurring errors and things that need to be fixed. We like to just spend as Jeff mentioned, spend some money at the beginning of the year. Let's fix the system. When it was set up so that it allowed errors. Let's fix it so it doesn't allow errors, and change the reporting format so that it's easier for council to see the numbers. Right now, they're more geared towards an accountant. We can change some of these reports to be easier for council to understand and summarize. And then after that, going forward, it should be much easier. We just have to, every month we have to clean up the books once the bank statement is reconciled, and there's errors that are just, unfortunately, the system was set up to allow for those things. We need to make some changes to the system, because you are going to be having an accounting system as long as the city's around. So we'd rather fix it up front, and then you should start seeing a decrease.
So, yeah, so we need to remember, you know, going back, I mean, this is a significant increase. And, you know, one of the reasons that we went in this direction was because we were hoping to save money for the city. I understand all the issues and concerns and cleaning things up, but I was really hoping that we would have done it all this year. But I hear you.
I mean, we cleaned up quite a few things, but there are things that just are recurring, I guess what you might call structural within the system, that we just need to fix those items. And it should, I mean, this is just a not to exceed, doesn't mean we're going to spend this. So each year, what we can do is as you start getting, I think there's going to be some reports on the contracts that you have. You know, you can kind of monitor how the contract is going, and we can certainly keep you up to date.
Okay. I would, my preference would be to do 150 and then increase it as we need. That's my thought.
I mean, we could certainly do that. There's always the mid-year budget adjustment, but I think what we have, Mayor, to be honest, is a realistic adjustment at 15 per month for now, at least, until the system does get smoother and cleaner. And as soon as that system is fixed, Roberto and his staff have to spend less time correcting problems and going back and redoing things, and then also doing that when the audit comes up, which it is currently coming up. I think this is pretty realistic. There were times where when Roberto first took over and when he prepared for this past year's audit, that it was exceeding, 20 in the low 20s every month. So we have seen it start to trend downward, and I think we'll get it again. But I do think, just to be conservative, I'd rather be high on costs and low on income and be proven wrong, at the end of the year. Roberto, and I'll leave any other commentary to you about that. And it is important to understand that we went from a very amateur accounting software and processes that were very small town to something a lot more professional. And I think it showed in this year's audit that things are getting better. And Roberto really did a very big pull to get the audit numbers together to find, so that we had no findings.
So if I may add, and my only comment would be, if council wants 150,000, we can do that. We can make the contract and then push for that. Just if you can just keep that in mind. If it turns out that, it's going to be a 180, just hate for it to come back and say, they're going over contract again, when we said that this was probably what it might be. We can certainly work towards it, but it would be good to have an idea of what you want, because we're expecting in June to bring the contract with RGS forward for your approval, because technically the contract ends on June 30th. So we need to have a contract for next year. It's year to year, and it can be terminated, I think, with 30 days notice or the like. But we should have a contract. I'd hate to budget 150 and the contract's 180. I'd rather have both numbers match. If you want 150, then we'll make the contract for 150. Or if you want 180, that's fine too. And then just let us know that you would like to keep it to 150, and we will work towards that and report back on a monthly basis. It's whichever you prefer. We're willing to work with that.
Kim, Scott?
Yeah, I think the logic or the rationale behind why it's 180 is logical. I think we should keep it there. I don't want to get in a situation like what we have with our lawyer, for example. And, you know, Roberto and Jeff are right. There are a lot of additional things that needed to happen with the budget. And, you know, Roberto prefaced it. We went from a small town, you know, just very basic to what we have now. So I think it should stay 180. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving it at 180 as well. Yeah, maybe we won't use it all.
Okay. That rarely happens, but so my next question has to do with total planning and building. The second line, which is the REAP and LEAP grants, I'm assuming.
Yes,
It shows we've already expended 17, almost 18K, but it still reflects 130. Shouldn't that be 118?
yes,
Okay.
you're quite right.
Yeah. And then why don't, the next section, why don't we have any PG&E or water charges?
Under,
Right there.
this is one of the ones that we're trying to find out where some of these things are in. They've been miscoded
Okay.
somewhere. I'm trying to figure out exactly where they're showing up, because this is where they were in 1920, but this year, and keep in mind, some of this should be coming down, but it's probably not zero. The City Hall building is where the solar panels are at. So there is a decrease. It might have gotten mixed in with a couple others, but let me find out. And because that is one thing Councilmember Donaldson asked about is PG&E. It is included in the budget. We'll see if we can find where it actually got charged and bring it back over here. This is just for the City Hall, not the rest of the buildings, but City Hall should be here.
Okay. Yeah, I have been following the PG&E charges because I sign all the checks and I read the check register every month. And it's not, I was expecting a much more significant decrease, but I haven't seen them lately, so.
So we'll take a look at the bills and see if it's
Got it.
if it's that the rates have gone up dramatically, or something's, maybe it's not, solar panels aren't doing what they're supposed to. We'll see.
Well, and that would
We'll
be
analyze
good to
it.
know, right? You know,
Yeah.
if there's some wire missing or something.
Or Jeff, you need to get up there and clean those panels off.
Right
have
after this,
somebody-
right after this meeting.
Do we have someone to clean them?
We do. After
just cleaned.
the fires, we actually hired someone, and Ron keeps an eye on those things and lets us know. He also keeps an eye on the hardware attached to the building to let us know that it is operating and
Good.
generating power.
Good. So if you guys are okay, let's move on to the police section.
I had a couple of questions, and
Okay.
one of them was in legal. And that's a situation where I think we probably need to increase the budget. And here's my rationale behind it. So we've got the expenditure of 211, or roughly 212,000, which equates to about 21K per month. And if you look at what we have budgeted, and we stay with what we're spending now, the 21K, that number should be more like 250,000 as opposed to 225.
Are you suggesting that we bump it up even more?
I mean, yeah, based on that rationale, did you follow what I was saying?
Yes, no, I hear you. And, but are you suggesting to increase it?
Yeah, that's exactly why I brought it up. I mean, you got 225, and if you just look at how much we're spending each month right now, if in the next 2 months we continue to spend on legal services like that, it's definitely going to be 250. Unless maybe, Jeff or Allison, you don't expect legal fees to continue to go at that same rate?
Well,
I would hope not.
my expectation, and of course my hope is that they will not. One of the most significant costs of legal fees that we've had this past year was CNPS issue. That was one of our major chunks of money out of that particular line item. Increased it just slightly after talking to Alex and what he anticipates with everything that he's been doing for us, and also Roberto. And we thought that we could perhaps keep it somewhat static. Again, this is something we can see how we do the first 6 months.
Yep.
This is one of those areas I'm more comfortable leaving it where it's at instead of increasing it, just like I didn't want to decrease, RGS. I think we don't have to increase this. My hope is that CNPS will consume a lot less of those funds. And even though we may have things moving forward with certain properties in the city, that I figure the lack of the CNPS, the same amount of CNPS funding would cover those other things that we're picking up. So that's the rationale. And like I said, we can readjust in 6 months, or we can increase it depending on the wish of the council.
I think there was also this year an adjustment. You know, we had a city manager leave, we had an acting city manager show up, and there was naturally a little more reliance on legal to get us through things. And so that also I don't see happening next year. I would not want to increase it. We can always increase it at mid-year, but yeah. And Alex is very aware. So for example, when we did hiring last time, he called me and he said, do you want me to be there? And that would have been what, 4, 5, 6 hours. And so I said no. So
and additionally, he's checking in with me in some meetings he may have attended in the past. I'm waving him off and letting him know I'll follow up with him if I have any questions. So
I would like to see it reach an equilibrium, you know, and hopefully settle a few things that we have. So Kim, did you have any input?
Yeah, I just think I agree with everything that you're saying, and just trying to keep it, it is increased by 5,000, but I don't think it should go any higher.
Okay. Or would you, is everybody ready to move on to police?
Yeah, the only, it's a point of clarification on the contract services with planning. Is that top line does that include EPS and DDA? And then the one below it is our, Joe Headley expenses. I guess just clarity for me. I'm sorry.
The 130 is for the housing element. You can't see the parens, but I'm guessing planning is, it says leap and reap. And then the other planning is just kind of more general. And it's all DD&A and
EPS.
David, yeah. So it's both of those.
I do believe Joe Headley's services are included in that.
Gotcha.
And Karen, is that in that top one, the 80,000?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thanks for that clarification. That was all.
If you don't mind, Mayor, maybe while Jeff answers any questions about the police, I need to take a quick break to feel more comfortable. I'll be right back.
We're all adults here. Take care of yourself. So the police. So I see the deferred compensation, and so you're considering keeping that one position open or
That's correct.
unfilled? Okay.
That's correct. Couple of reasons. One, just until we, well, 3 reasons actually, and this is further discussion by council and of course with the airport as well. One is we would have a hard time filling that right now anyway, and doing it in a timely manner, you know, trying to find the right one, and we're short right now anyway, right? So that's why we have a reserve program, and that's why we've relied on that reserve program. The second issue is I'm having discussions with the chief, and we're looking at ways to utilize the reserve program and our overtime and see if we can come up with a model to do this with 10 officers permanently, quite possibly. And that is by allotting our third officer on day shift to work the peak hours and supplement them with the reserve hours once we are back up to full staff. And of course, that we'll have some clarification with staffing as soon as the city manager selection process is done and determine what those openings are. And we've also got folks on leave. Quite honestly, our bandwidth to recruit and hire is another issue, and then train. We're just now getting our reserves trained up and ready to be on the street. So for this year, based on COVID, our capacity to actually hire and train folks, we think we have enough with our reserves and with our overtime to cover this and still result in the personnel cost savings between ourselves and the airport at this time. And again, I'll be speaking with the chief about different deployment models and how we can do this maybe even a little more effective and efficiently and economically. But we've just started that conversation, Mayor.
Okay. And so I did notice the special supply police funding was moved up to materials and supply.
Yes, we're just trying to simplify the budget, and supplies are supplies. I have yet to find any of the special supplies in the police department. We're not sure.
I think they're all special.
Yeah, they are.
For repair and maintenance. And can you tell me why the repair and maintenance went up? Is that, oh, actually, it looks like it's just in the middle, the actuals. And are those cars?
No, repair and maintenance are for things around the police department that may need fixing, whether it's locker room stuff or doors or things like that.
Okay.
Did the increase in ammunition just level that budget item out? Is that what you were trying to do there?
The increase is actually bringing it back to a normal level for the year.
Okay.
We just had, with COVID, we didn't shoot as much because we couldn't be out at the range sometimes and shooting as much when we had shelter in place. So we just did our basic qualifications the past year, and we had some extra from the last year, so we were very frugal with it. And we didn't need it to save that money this past year. Now we're trying to get back up to normal.
Okay.
I like that you split out the travel, meals, and lodging.
Yes.
And I would love to see that for the council as well, when we do travel, right?
Okay.
I mean, the last year has been unique. But I know like the Cal Cities conference is coming up in September, and I'd like to go, as well as, trainings for new folks would be good to have. We don't have a planning commission budget, because they all travel to Sacramento too for the conference. Where does that funding come out?
Karen would probably have a better grasp on when we do the rare occasions we do get that.
Actually, that's out of the council.
I'm sorry, it's what?
It's the commission training comes out of council.
Okay. But there's no expense for that on our council sub budget. So I'm just wondering where that came out of previously.
Mayor, I don't know previously, but Roberto, if you're there, maybe we can put a training and travel and expense, travel meals and expense portion in the council for that, since they and the commission do that, and we can figure out, how it should be populated with what monies. One thing I'd like to point out about training is it used to be in one line item, training and travel and those things. We still have we've lowered our training budget. We're keeping it low. The pandemic is just opening up and there's not a lot of things we have to do right now. Next year, hopefully you'll see an increase to get back towards the 30-ish or so that we do utilize, that we have historically. Two things to remember about that, however, most of the classes we have to send people to, they don't have here on the peninsula and they have to go far away. A lot of the required classes, the field training, you know, program managers, your command staff training, your supervisory training, airport police training, which is mandatory. That's only down in LA. However, we do get reimbursed, and you guys don't necessarily see that we do get reimbursed for a lot of the tuition. So the bulk of our costs are in travel and meals and stuff, and we do get reimbursed for. Chris, I don't know how much did we get this year, even though it was a slow year.
Chief, I don't have a total on that. I can check, but it depends on the course and which post program it falls under. It can be as much as even backfill while you're gone for the most reimbursement. But in general, they cover the tuition and lodging and meals. That's the second best deal. And then after that, they always cover, it seems, travel and maybe meals.
Okay.
So we do get a portion of that back. It's kind of hard to track because the state is sporadic in sending those.
Yeah.
We could get some from 2 years ago, and you know, so, but we do get a significant portion of that back. I just want to point that out.
Okay. So I have to leave in like 5 minutes. And I'm wondering if you guys wouldn't mind if I just go through my points and then I depart and you guys go over the rest, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
I don't have much else. I think I totally agree with the payroll increase for not Randy, our public works, Ron, of course. So I agree with that. No capital improvements. Portola. How quickly can we get the Portola and curb replacement done? Is the curb replacement for the Portola walk?
The curb replacement is citywide. Since we've resurfaced and redone a lot of our streets, that's great, but there are several sections of curb throughout the city. It's probably going to be a multi-year project. The water is, of course, flowing not down the curb, but going in the gap between a lot of these curbs and undermining streets in some places. We had that on Via Verde. Although we were lucky to get it because of that water main break. It was already breaking away before that, but luckily Cal-Am had to pay for it, which was good timing. Portola work walkway, we will be bringing forth a resolution for the SB1 funding, the RMRA funds in June. Get that approved, and Karen and I are working on the online application for that project as we speak. So as soon as we get approval, we would move to work on that. We received a written estimate of about, I want to say 31 to 33,000 for that. And that's doing it
for the entire walkway.
Yeah. And that's doing it right with not wood walls or anything, but fully concrete and repaving everything.
Okay. So that was all I had. I think notes are going to be made 367. And so when would we get the wildfire grant? How much was that request for?
I believe the request was for $130,000. And Randy, do you know if they have any timing on that?
August. Randy, just let me know that it's looking like the end of August.
Okay.
For notification.
So that'll just be added after, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's so I look forward to getting the true up and the contributions and memberships but you guys did an amazing job, and I'm loving all of the detail. And I'm really looking forward to next year when we have a little less of the older lines.
Thank you, Mayor.
So Roberto, Jeff, nice job. And I don't know what happens if I need to leave, because we're being recorded and this is an announced meeting.
Yeah, unless Kim has any other questions, I mean, I only had one very brief question, and it was on the fire contract. If,
Yeah.
you know, let's say is Monterey, you know, is it kind of a set type expense? I mean, in other words, if Monterey, do they pretty much charge the same thing as Seaside Fire?
Monterey is significantly higher.
Seaside,
Okay.
yeah, it's a set contract rate, and they are very gracious to us and a good partner.
Yes.
And,
Okay.
and the quality of their staff, as you've seen, is top notch.
And it yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just curious on that, but that would be the only other question I had. Otherwise, I mean, we could be done.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't have any other questions.
I would, tying to Scott's last comment, have you been in touch with them and we know that it's not going to increase?
I don't know where we're at with what part of the contract year we're in.
I can check, but we still are on a contract.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's set, and we're still in the middle of a contract. So.
And do you know about how long left we have on that contract?
I don't.
Karen can check.
Yeah, I'll check and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Mayor.
Super.
Thanks,
All
Karen.
right. So I guess I'll adjourn. Does anybody else have anything?
Just great job across the board. Very well done. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for
Thanks,
all the
guys.
clarity. Appreciate it.
All right.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to the final version.
Bye,
Be safe.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.